studied women in comics and increasing comics readership. Just hope everyone can kind of go down the line and introduce themselves and maybe say some things they worked on or what they do.
I'm Greg Rucka. I'm writing Lazarus for Image and Stumptown at Oni Press, and I'll be writing Cyclops at Marvel shortly.
And Veil awesome. At Dark Horse.
And Veil at Dark Horse, yes.
And you're awesome.
The check cleared, I see.
I'm Sabrina Taylor. Excuse me. I am a Valkyrie, which, if you don't know what that is, you can totally look that up. I work at a comic book store here in Seattle called the Comic Stop. It's actually run by the Demonakis brothers, who are the guys who founded Emerald City. So yes, I am a paid employee. And I also write for IGN. I write on a blog called Organization Antisocial Geniuses.
I'm Sarah Gatos. I am an editor at IDW Publishing down in San Diego. I edit a lot of their licensed kids books, and I was formerly at DC Wildstorm for a bunch of years.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sina Grace, and I write and draw comic books at Image Comics. And I also served as Robert Kirkman's editorial director at a Skybound imprint at Image Comics as well, so done a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
I'm Rachel Edidin. I write and edit comics, formerly at Dark Horse, now freelance. I also cover comics and comics culture and write a lot about gender and geek identity politics for Wired.com. And quick plug, there is a panel after this called Looking Past the Target Audience that covers some similar territory from a very different angle. You should stick around for it.
It's right here, right?
It is right here. You don't even have to stand up.
I don't have to move.
Yeah.
I'm Kelly Sue DeConnick. I write Captain Marvel for Marvel Comics and other things. What else do I do?
Pretty Deadly.
I do Pretty Deadly at Image, working on Bitch Planet, which should be out towards the end of the year. And yeah, and I think I just got announced as working on the Prometheus project at Dark Horse as well.
And your jacket is super cool.
I'm
It's
afraid
my Khaleesi shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's hardcore.
Thank you.
They brought you back around for that, did they?
Yeah, you know.
How big was the grappling hook?
It was pretty big.
Yeah, they must have netted you and tasered the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Sign that.
Yeah, it was, we'll talk.
I'm going to be interested in that conversation.
All right, so to start, I just want to see whoever wants to answer.
It's not going to be.
Jump for it.
Yeah. It's gonna
Why do you feel inclusiveness is important in comics?
Because readership, as a person of color and someone who grew up reading comics, I think knowing that the comics are made by a diverse group of people who represent possibly what you are is really important in the stories that you see. And there are stories that are universal, but I think that knowing that comics are for everybody and the people that are making them represent that ideal is important.
No, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, please.
And I'm going to answer with another question. Why wouldn't it be?
I like that one.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Juno Diaz has a really fantastic quote, and you should seek out the full paragraph because it's really something of beauty. But he says, if you want to drive a people insane, deny them representations of themselves. And I think that the message that we send when we don't reflect the broader culture in our stories is that that you are other. And that denies people membership in our larger community. It is bad for us. As a community, as an organism, it is a thing that makes us ill. It is actually bad for us.
It's fundamentally bad for the society. I'm going to be really crass. I'm also going to say it's stupid business.
Yes, there is that as well.
It's just dumb
It is
business.
leaving money on the table.
And
I don't like that.
And we see publishers doing this all the time. I mean, all the time. And even taking steps back. Oh, well, you were welcome here, but we're going to remove those characters now. And it's absurd. I mean, it's absurd. Why would you go someplace where you're told you're not, where you don't belong? You know? I mean, it's just it's an asinine business model. And I have spent a lot of time thinking about the fact that, in particular, the big two, you know, they're capitalist sharks. They don't really care if the books are good, guys. They don't. The books just need to come out, and you just need to buy them. All they want to do is take your money, and this is a mechanism for getting it. What they haven't figured out is that it would be a more effective mechanism if they said, hey, everybody, you're welcome. They're desperate to pick your pocket, but they're too stupid to figure out that the way to do it is to ask you nicely to open your wallet. So,
I remember as a kid too, like, there were characters I always loved growing up, but I never thought, oh, I can grow up as that one, you know. And even with like Batman and Robin, I'm like, well, they technically have black hair like me, but they're not brown-skinned like me. And it was sort of like, it was always that wall, like there was never anyone I had for me. And then as I started to tell stories about myself, and people were like, yeah, I vibe with that, I realized, oh, that doesn't mean I can't make a space for me and I can't make heroes for me. And that's why inclusiveness is cool, because then I feel happy, and from a capitalist perspective, I can pay rent.
I'm curious, both the panel and the room, who here has felt excluded in comics?
hands high. Oh, hi. Not timid. You're safe in here.
Raise your hand if the Regina George of comics made you feel bad about yourself.
And then make fetch happen.
Yeah.
It's quiche now, I hear.
This is going to sound really silly, but, and this is minor, because I will have noted that most of the people who raised their hands were women and people of color. And here I am, a white middle-class guy. I had, and I remember this experience when I started reading comics, and I was reading Uncanny X-Men, which was sort of my gateway comic drug. I'd read a lot of comics before, but I had fallen in with a group of friends who read Uncanny, and they said, here you go. And I'm Jewish, and I'm not Orthodox, but I have always identified as a Jew. I've never been ashamed of that. The moment that I realized Kitty Pryde was Jewish was a huge moment for me. That moment of inclusiveness for a person who really isn't excluded in the main in the culture was profound for me. I can only imagine what it's like, you know, to be a person of color, to be queer, you know, to be a woman and finally see representation in a medium you love, you know, a powerful, and by powerful I don't necessarily mean Can Punch Planet, but well-rendered character. I mean, you know, I've spent a lot of time thinking about it because, you know, I'm from the privileged class, you know, 98% of the time. But that moment of sort of window opening where I've always remembered that.
And my window opening moment, I was really into music in high school, and I had read comics like Calvin and Hobbes as a kid, but never really knew, you know, DC Marvel kind of stuff. And I was reading a zine called Punk Planet, which no longer exists. And they talked about a comic. I brought my prop. This is it. This is the first comic I went to a comic book store to read, Action Girl Comics by Slave Labor Graphics. And it was simple enough to me that it had girl in the title. I was like, oh, there's something for me. And of course I started going to buy these, and it was just, I wouldn't say that the comic book shop owner was supportive, but you know, I used to go to music stores a lot, and they always kind of were not very supportive either. But he left me alone, and I started digging through stacks, and now here I am.
And now you can't get out.
It's true. I cannot.
So let's talk about the retailer thing.
Let's do it.
I love my retail partners.
You're welcome.
Heidi, make sure you get that down.
This is going out live. Order Bitch Planet.
Diamond code.
There are a lot of amazing retailers, and I think the thing that good retailers do well is they are inclusive and they're welcoming to people who are of all different types and who read all different types of comics. I was interested, we do have one retail employee here. I was just interested to know how you approach that as a retailer, dealing with people and trying to, you know, customers.
So for me personally, my main role in the store, and as my boss likes to joke, the reason that I got hired was I buy all the manga in the store, and I also buy other things too, but I'm definitely primarily responsible for that. Each employee we look through the Diamond catalog, we give our suggestions for the month, and then really it's up to our manager. I do know that me and there's only 3 employees in the store. Me and the other employee we give lots of suggestions like Lumberjanes, titles like that. So good.
Just got my copy.
It's so good.
That's why I was late. I went shopping.
And sometimes it's a fight. Like, I actually had to convince to have him get Lumberjanes. That was a convincing moment. What was another one I had to convince him on? Rat Queens. Like, and I for those of you who read the comic and know how crazy it sells, like the fact that I had to convince him still blows my mind. So it's really, sometimes it's really hard. And especially if you're not the one that makes the primary purchasing decision, all you can do is annoy them until they order what you want.
But I've also been to your shop, and I think if you could talk a little bit about, obviously I know you, but I could tell that you make people feel welcomed there as soon as they walk in the door. And obviously, maybe we can all flash back to what it was like to go to a comic book store, or even now, if you go to a new shop, what it feels like to kind of be like, what's going to happen?
And I mean, like, again, black girl, grew up in the Midwest. So for me, I always want people to be, I want you to be part of this. I want you to enjoy and find the things that make you happy, because that's why we all do this. There's something in one of these panels, in one of these comics, that makes us happy. And, ultimately, my employer would like you to pay for things. And so I think that for me, I've always approached diversity and geekdom in general as we all share a common bond in that we enjoy this and it makes us happy, and start from there. So yeah, I definitely try really hard to make sure that people have what they want. But there's that fine line between ordering all the stuff that everybody wants, and I totally get this, and then making your rent every month. That's hard too.
I'll say that I had an argument with a friend. I did a signing at a comic store in Los Angeles, and this friend is a female, still is, and she was like, I hate that store. And I was like, why? And she's like, they didn't have anything for me, and no one talked to me. They just assumed I was a friend of yours here to support you. They didn't think like I did this or that or this, and it's just a stupid clubhouse. And I was like, I said, I don't know that, and and I know this retailer like for over 10 years, and they're doing what they can do with their audience. And she brought up fantastic stores in Los Angeles, Secret Headquarters and Meltdown, and she's like, I don't get why they can't be like that. And I was like, well, they're trying. Like, this is what they can do in their like location. They get a lot of this type of customer, and I was a little offended because I was like, they had a queer aisle, like a thing dedicated for queer books, and they had a great kids section, and I said, they do huge things for a free comic book day, and they get all these kids in, and it wasn't enough. She was like, well, yeah, that's just kids and men, and I'm like, that's still something, and also she never actually said anything to them, and never asked for what she wanted.
I'm on her side.
Well, and I get that, and I respect that, but I didn't, I don't know what good it does to not tell someone, give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, I had this experience, and these are my expectations going into your building, and it was a one-time thing, because she was like, oh yeah, they're only men and they didn't talk to me, and it's like, well, one of the store owners is a woman and they had another female employee, you just weren't there that moment. So I felt like it could have been a moment of conversion where a conversation could have happened.
Well,
and it's tough because
The onus is not on the consumer.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's a legitimacy to the complaint. I mean, if you walk into a store, that experience is an immediate impression, and that impression goes a million miles. I mean, and there's there's an onus on the retailer to make that entry, you know, that moment, that entry a positive one. I know a store in Olympia where literally you walk in and on your right, immediately, like you walk in through the doors and on your right, kids rack, right there. You know, and then you get the toys, and then you've got on your left, and then ahead of you is the stand of employee picks. You know, I'm not a retailer, and I don't feel I can speak to it with any degree of expertise, but I absolutely do think that, you know, like I said, I'm from the privileged group here.
Right.
And there have been comic book stores I've walked into where it's been like, I cannot get out of here fast enough.
Right.
I mean, there might as well have been a guy at the door with a shotgun saying, leave.
Right.
And I was like, I came in here with money in hand to give you, and instead I entered a hell den that smells like cat piss. I'll be going. You know the store I'm talking about. Right? So Rachel go like, I've been in that store.
I can think of a few. I want to jump in really quickly and say, on one hand, that what you say makes sense in a vacuum, in a neutral setting, but this isn't a neutral setting, and what it comes down to for me is that I think comics retailers and comics publishers have a lot to prove still. That we're talking about industries and settings that have been overwhelmingly and actively hostile.
Well, and still,
to,
still are
hostile to women. And the, you know, I live in Portland. I am lucky. Odds are really good if I walk into a comics shop, it will have a local section. 2/3 of the people in it will be queer women. Like, because I'm there, but I still get nervous going into comic shops because there are a lot that aren't like that. And I think when you're part of an institution that has actively alienated and marginalized a group or groups for a very long time, it is your responsibility to reach out, not theirs to come to you and keep giving you the benefit of the doubt after they've been being pushed away.
And the thing is that there are now so many excellent stores. There is no reason I have to, for 1 minute, go into a store that is going to just make the assumption that when I walk in that I've been dragged there or I'm there to carry his stuff.
Yep.
You know?
Right.
And that happens. That happens so regularly. My artist on Bitch Planet, the reason he is my artist on Bitch Planet is because when I was at Toronto Fan Expo and I was walking, at the end of every show, it's becoming more and more difficult, but it used to be at the end of every show on Sunday, I would have time to walk Artist Alley and like discover things, you know? And I am invisible. People look right through me. Now that my profile is a little bit higher and I have the red hair and I'm also like loud, it happens less and less often. But I was walking around Artist Expo and I was so clearly like people were looking for the wallet that might be with me, you know? And I stopped in front of Val's table and he stood up and looked me in the eye and presented his portfolio to me as though I might be a customer or interested in comics. You know, I have had other professionals ask me when we were all standing around in a group, oh, so do you read comics? Like, this is a thing that still happens, you know? And it's, like, yes, progress is being made, and I don't mean to sweep it under the rug. Yay for progress. But when there are fantastic fucking stores that won't do that to me, or fantastic human beings like Val who will make the assumption that I not only might buy his stuff, but, oh, perhaps we might work together on something, you know? I'm going there, you know? Like...
And this is all I was trying to posit.
Before we jump down your throat.
Oh,
Sorry.
I spend my entire life getting shit on. It's cool.
That genuinely wasn't my intent.
No. And I'm happy. We're having a conversation. This is what I meant to say, though. By bringing that up, I know it's asking a lot of the people who don't necessarily think they have a voice, but is it... And again, I'm okay to be wrong, and I don't know that this is necessarily the most fully formed out thought, but, you know, why not start a dialogue and ask more of your retailer? And again, this is
because when you're used to someone following you around with a saw going out on limbs, it gets harder and harder.
Well, and again, the presumption is that the dialogue's already underway. You know, I mean, clearly you can cite, and I don't want to get into the specifics here, that's the danger of this. But I really do think, I don't think it's actually getting better. I really don't. I think we've been treading water. I think we backslid, and I think we're treading water now. And for every Ms. Marvel there is, there's everything that DC put out. No, I'm dead serious.
No,
We're not making progress right now. We're making progress in a fan and retailer sense, but the publishers are not coming with us, and they will not come with us until you hit them in the wallet.
I guess, yeah, I'm having a hard time because I do Image and Boom mainly,
Yeah.
and they're both so progressive.
I think Image and Boom, and I can give you Oni, and I mean we can go down the line, but
Right.
even with Image and IDW and the front of the catalog publishers, they're still not the big two.
They still
and this
own the
is
market.
still an industry that is ruled by the big two.
And the
Because
big
it-
two are what newcomers see.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the big two are not only what newcomers see, it's how they get newcomers to come into the store
Yep.
for the most part. Because Sarah's story is I think, rarer. You Action Girl, I'm going in for that. But most people are going in because they want, name the title. And like I said, I think that, I mean, look, I love working with Image. I mean, I could not be happier with the experience there so far. And I have never had, and talk about diversity just in publishing, just in-house is fantastic. I mean, I love it.
There's a person in that office that can cover pretty much, well, except for trans, but that's a little harder to. I haven't. Anyway, I'm not going to do that right now.
Yeah, no,
but there are.
come back to the high grass,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
into the deep water.
But there is someone to talk to about pretty much every issue there before you go to print. Like you can be like, hey, you identify as this. Like, how do you feel about that? And and that's nice that that's within the office
And that's active and promoted in the office culture. And I can't guarantee it because I ain't been there for 5 years. But I would be willing to bet a hell of a lot of money that, representation notwithstanding, there's nobody at DC where somebody has the courage, the wherewithal, been given the permission, has been given the sense and the culture of the publishing house that they can walk down the hall and say, hey, Janelle, what do you think of this? Rucka wrote this, I had a thing happen on Twitter last night, and it really did bother me, and I hate to admit this because I hate admitting that I actually look at this stuff. There had been a Twitter string that I had been tagged on, and one person had been saying, oh, I love everything he's done, and it's been so great, and then this one person had tweeted, except the way that Renee recognizes Kate as Batwoman because of her ass. And I was like, I didn't write that.
No.
And I got really worked up. It was one of those moments where I was like, tweet in haste, regret at leisure. So I was like sitting there holding my phone being like, how am I going to respond to that? Because I did not write that. I did not write that. In point of fact, I had Renee, who is a horn dog, going, that woman in the really tight leather has a really cute ass. It's not until she gets punched in the jaw that she goes, I know her. Now, one can argue there's not a huge difference, but it was substantial to me.
Yeah, but and this is totally a different, like we're now veering into an entirely different panel, which would be a fascinating panel that we should
Sorry,
have.
it's just-
But then when you do that, you're in danger of becoming. Did you guys ever see that that Amazon comment review thread where like Anne Rice was arguing?
Yes.
It was like,
Yes.
fucking don't do that.
No.
Just let them not like you. It's okay. Like you will spend. If you start
Oh, yeah.
deciding to correct all of those misread, because we have all been misread. We have people have said you've done things that you haven't done to everybody out
And
there.
I know that there are thousands of them out there. This one felt it necessary to tag me.
Well, you've done it now. You've
Yeah.
corrected it
And
now.
that was that. So that was.
So
I
you guys all
actually
tweet that,
did.
okay?
That's
Yeah.
not what happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now all of Twitter knows how to get you to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on camera.
No.
I'm closing all accounts.
Can I respond to what Greg said about office culture? Because I think that's a really important and really interesting note. Because So I worked at one company for 7 years, which is kind of atypical in comics publishing. And during that time, got to know a lot of other lower and mid-level editors at other publishers. And what I keep seeing, and this is starting to change. I think Boom is a place where this has really radically changed, in particular, but where you've got a really, really distinct generation split, in terms not only of age, but of tenure within the comics industry. And you have a lot of younger folks who are coming in, are really interested in asking questions and in changing things and in challenging assumptions and challenging traditions, who basically burn themselves out just knocking against that wall for years and years. And I come very much from like a DIY punk background as far as activism, and what working in the comics industry taught me is that grassroots change is not enough. Like, we need that from people who are in positions of power. We need institutional support if we're going to see any actual significant progress.
Absolutely. When I was at DC, in my first couple months, there was a coworker of mine who had been the happy puppy in the office, super stoked about everything, and he was slowly getting angrier and angrier thanks to a certain project. And one of our other coworkers turned to me and was like, "It happens to all of you. We all get burnout. Everybody hits this moment at DC."
And elsewhere.
Well, I mean, the editors across the board, I think, are overworked and underpaid. You know, and it seems to be becoming more so. And I don't know what that is about, but I think that they're getting more and more
About money.
books. Yeah.
It's a prestige job. It's an industry where the primary currency is getting to work in the industry, and everyone is replaceable because there are so many people who want to be there.
Exactly. And it's also very hard to move up.
Yeah.
I was told very early that to move up, you need to change companies, and it's
Or
true.
kill the person who has the job you want.
Or both.
That also works.
That's not a guarantee.
No, but it ups the
Not that I
odds.
would
You
know.
just made us all like we have to testify now.
I'm okay with that. Yeah. You know, I mean, I don't want to. I feel a little dangerous.
Oh, go for it.
No. Actually, in the opposite direction, I think than where you think I'm going. But like
We're in a safe space.
Okay, I do actually feel like I'm legitimately for financial reasons, but I do think that Marvel things feel a little like Marvel is noticing. They see the women coming in because of the films. I think it's super great of them to make these billion-dollar commercials for our books. That is like super really great that they do that. But you know, there are a lot of women who are fans of the movies who are venturing into the comics because of the affection that they have for these characters on the screen, and they're looking for ways in. And you know, and I think for a while, like I think the first wave of that, they got turned away, you know, but they keep coming, and I think some people are noticing, and like, you know, I keep getting asked like, whoa, you know, why is Captain Marvel getting a reboot? I don't understand why Captain Marvel's getting a new #1. Captain Marvel's getting a new #1 because they're giving us another chance. Because a new #1 means a new flood of new readers. It means our numbers go back up again. You know, that book was in the low 20s. Marvel books in the low 20s get canceled. That book stayed in the low 20s for a very long time. We got fucking outsold. I'm so gonna regret saying this, but we got outsold by Red She-Hulk. Okay, like if you fucking get outsold by Red She-Hulk, you should be canceled. All right, but they let us keep going. They not only let us keep going, they supported us. They're giving us a new #1, and I think that there are not I mean, I don't fool myself into thinking that they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. You know, I think they're doing this because they see, oh, wait a minute, how many people came to that? Wait, the Women of Marvel panel was standing room only, and they had to turn people away. What? Like, I think that they're starting to see, like, oh, there is a whole other potential revenue stream here that we were not previously aware of.
Look, I think, look, as I say this over and over again, if the way they're going to make the positive change is because they think they're going to profit from it, I don't care how they get there.
I'll take it. I will take it. But I have to say, I still butt heads with people regularly, but that's just sort of my way.
You're benevolent.
Yeah, you know. But I do feel supported.
But okay, so here's the problem though. When you have that thing, but then you also have the people who are in charge, like a certain Warner Brothers owned company, who stand in a room with a bunch of people after the Batwoman debacle and say, well, obviously we did it because people in comic, like they justified it because their characters can't be happy, and refuse to even talk about, you know, sexuality and how that played a part into it, when you can't even get them to address these core components. It's how do we make them change?
You
We
stop
stop
buying
buying
the
their
books.
books.
Yeah.
I've said this over and over again. Don't buy the books. You don't need the complete run. If they treat you badly, you treat them the way you would any other person in your life who consistently treats you badly. You cut them off.
You propose.
I lived
There's a terrible joke, I'm sorry.
the battered spouse analogy, and I
Terribly
really believe this, and I really get angry about this. If you don't like the book, don't buy the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that. And it's the only way these people are going to get it, right?
Can I play devil's advocate for 30 seconds?
By all means.
Awesome. So, correct me if
Get
I'm
me
wrong.
behind.
And you probably on this table, and maybe you might be the only people that could tell me how close I am to this. I'm assuming that if there were a person from the big two here and they were at this table, they would say, well, those books fund the other books that you guys like, correct?
Yes, that is said internally.
Thank you.
I don't think that's just said at the big
I've
two.
suspected, but, you know. And so, I mean, how...
See, I don't even believe that's true
How
anymore.
true is
They have
that?
the company in question.
I think that ends up creating a ghetto system where basically you've got the big books that are the important books, and then there's room for like, well, and this is something I'm really worried about seeing with things advancing, because it's felt for a long time like diversity initiatives, and especially gender-related ones,
Yep.
at the big two have taken a kind of there can be only one approach. Like
Yep.
for a long time, DC was like, we're really feminist because we have Gail Simone.
Yep. Yep.
And like 700 dudes, but Gail Simone.
But you know what? That is a
And that scares
cultural
me.
problem. That is a I mean, we do this thing where, and we all do it. Like it's not just the big companies doing it to us. There was somebody a couple years ago. Was this a couple years ago? It was a group of female fans. In an effort to, I guess, balance some kind of favorite writer list thing that was happening, they had a tournament of women creators, effectively pitting us all against each other to be like, you know, Queen Shit of Fuck Mountain or whatever it is. Like, I don't want that job.
No.
And Jen Van Meter and I were in a heat off against each other to get people, and they let us know so we could get our fans to vote against each other. And Jen and I wrote a letter together, and we're like, please don't do this, you know, like, or don't do it with us, you know, and they, it is their right. They were very kind and took us out of it, but they did continue the tournament, and I think. There were in large part younger women in a different phase of their feminism, who you know, had maybe not experienced the way we not only get pitted against one another, but pit ourselves against one another. Like yet, and that shit has got to stop. We have room for everybody.
There can be more than one.
That's right.
It's, I mean, I've seen it, you know, I've been, I guess, in the industry now 15 years, and there will still be times you walk in the room and there is an issue of, how to put it, the only girl in the room,
Yeah.
professionally, and to such an extent that they, and I know stories of professionals who have actively sabotaged other women, gone to editors, gone, you know, I mean, said horrible, horrible things behind there. And instead of going, there's room for all the creators, that's, you know, that is the system. So the system now perpetuates itself. It's done its job well enough that it's brainwashed the people it's oppressing into continuing the oppression.
Yeah. I think one of the things that as women we need to do is quit shooting for half the jobs and shoot for all of them.
Yep.
All right? So that's my plan, is we're going to try to take over all the jobs. and no? Nobody? All right? All right? All right, sweet.
No, but
I'd like to see
Pause.
us stop looking at it as a zero-sum economy. I just want us to make more jobs
There you go.
to have, because, I mean, I don't want it to be an either or. I don't want there to be that there's the team of straight white dudes and then there's the other slot that goes to the black guy or the white woman, or like I don't see why it has to be a zero-sum economy. I don't see why we can't have all of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
And I mean, this panel is called Broadening Comics Readership. I think the solution isn't replacement, it's breadth. It's
And also I think just like shaking up this some of the outdated like dinosaur ideas we have about people still have these ideas that like you know, well, women are not very visual, so they don't want to read comics. Yeah, we're totally not visual at all, which totally explains fashion magazines.
And Pinterest, like.
Yes, and Pinterest, exactly.
Pinterest isn't for recipes.
And or like
From the books for reference.
you know that superhero comic books have to be adolescent male power fantasies, or that women somehow can't identify with that.
Or that
like
men can't identify with women.
Yes,
with
well, that's
female
another one.
characters.
That's
Like,
a huge one. Like there was I keep repeating this story, but the Onion AV Club came out with a report about this is films. I would shudder to see what this would be in comics, but in films, 15% of the protagonists last year were women. 15% of the protagonists were women. 15, guys. That is worse than it was 10 years ago when it was 16%. And 30% of the speaking roles. And so what happens is we teach little girls how to identify with male protagonists because they fucking have to. Because there's nobody else to identify with if they want to consume mass culture. And so so they learn to identify with male protagonists, but little boys not only are not allowed or not given the opportunity to identify with female protagonists, but are in fact discouraged from doing so because that is lower status, and why would you do that? And this is like the definition of preaching to the choir. You guys came to a broadening, you know.
you're all taking this down, right? Because
Yeah.
none of you knew this, right?
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, so, you know, I find myself in this weird place where every chance I get to staff up with women, I'm going to take it. I'm going to write as many female characters as I can. I'm going to employ as many women as I possibly can. And at the same time, then that also reinforces that whole thing where, like, well, the ladies write the ladies.
Yeah.
And,
Okay,
you
but
know,
but I would counter that with, I get asked now, so why'd you make Forever a woman?
Right.
You know,
As
because
though that
now
were
I
yeah.
have now become the guy who writes women.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Right.
you're like, because there's more room for it. Like, that's why.
Yeah, I do it because I like it.
Yep.
I like writing female characters.
I really want
That's
to start
why.
trolling superhero panels and asking, why did you decide to make that character white? Why did you decide to make him a man?
Awesome.
I was wondering, what does the fact that this character is straight say about like your personal fetishization of straight people.
Well, yeah, and
Go.
That's
It's
going to
time
end
for
really
the-
badly, Rachel.
What?
That's going to end really
Oh, but it
badly.
would be so glorious.
It would.
really
It would be
Briefly.
great in the half second where you watch, fill in the blank,
Yeah.
lose all color,
Meltdown.
but then the mouth will open,
Yeah.
and it will just all go to hell.
If I ever decide to, make my career go up in flames, I'm just going to be a professional. I'm going to be a professional panel troll. So.
I can think of better ways to go out.
I know, and I totally forgot. I was going to say, it sounds like it's also time for like the allies to become outspoken. I always had this I always felt like I was ghettoized as someone who writes about like openly gay characters who date not even conventionally attractive gay characters. But it's like my fan base is mainly straight dudes, and they're like, yeah, like I love it, man, and it was weird, like even being in random towns, being asked to draw bears kissing my protagonists and stuff, and it's like that's cool, and I think it's it's stuff like that. I need to hear more of that as a creator to do more of that. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but like it's time for people who aren't necessarily, the implied audience to say like I would like more of this, and be it with your dollars, or be it with your tweets, or be it with your going to the comic store and forcing them to order it if they're not going to do it. That feels like the next step, because everyone seems to be doing the work for themselves and what they want, and empowering others around them. And
Yeah,
I think
and just in terms of allies, I'm a straight white woman of privilege as well, and I do believe that it's not incumbent on the person who is suffering oppression to be the educator. That's a role that I think I and other people in my standing can take. And I do try and make myself open for questions at work. If someone's kind of uncomfortable with something and they don't know which way to go, they talk to me, and I think that's great. Like, Sina called me the other week and was like, what do you think about...
we talked about sex workers.
Yeah, he's writing a character, and he was just like, I'm not comfortable with this because I'm a man and I don't have that experience.
Kelly
Please.
and Greg don't hate you guys.
Yeah, we're not the
Sure.
assholes we appear to be. We actually have to split from them. So much. Thank you.
I'm taking my water.
Do it.
See you later.
Bye. And talk about two allies right there.
Yeah.
Leaving the room, though. They're into it and
All
over
right, let's
it.
all talk about them now.
Yeah. Something I did want to bring up quickly. Janelle, did you have something that you want to go with?
I'm going to tell you to keep going.
Oh, okay. So in terms of broadening comic readership, not from a sexuality or gender or race perspective, I think that licensed comics do play an important role in that, and not just because I work on them, but I do see them as kind of the entry drug.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
and also
Yeah.
licensed comics had a bad reputation for a long time, and deservedly so, that they weren't of a certain quality. But I do think that's changing, and I think it's really, really important how many girls and kids go in and buy Adventure Time, and then they're hooked, and they're going to go explore other things. So
And they should be saying why they like Adventure Time, too.
Yeah.
Because as someone who had the extreme pleasure of working on the Adventure Time comics, it's run very well. They give a lot of creative freedom, and you don't always get that with licensed books. I know, my dream was like, oh, I really want to work on the Buffy book. And then, like, as it was coming out, I realized, oh, like, you got to get Sarah Michelle Gellar's approval, and it was,
Yeah. No,
it's like, never mind, it's a hassle.
it's
But
very hard to do, but I think it's even more important that it's done well, because if that person who's maybe into Star Trek, I edit that book, is like, well, I'm going to check this out, and it's bad, that was kind of our opportunity to hook somebody, and there it went. And something that I think is a barrier just from a practical standpoint, too, in terms of retailers, and I still find this to be true, is when you go into a store and it's crazy disorganized, and, it's already hard enough, like, which Robin do I like? Like, which Batman am I buying? So having a store that's well organized, inviting, and a person there that you can ask questions about is really helpful. And thank goodness for the internet, because when I started going to the comic book shops, there was none of that. So in terms of making progress, yay, internet.
Can I jump on the licensed book thing for? Because I think one of the best things about licensed books is that they're an opportunity to hook audiences past, to basically, bait and switch is a really loaded term for this, but to pull people in who are interested in something for one reason and show them something that they might not be expecting to see. And I edited the Last of Us comics. And have any of you guys played the game or read? Okay.
Mine's glitching.
Oh.
So I guess I'll read the comics.
Yeah. So the comics. Here's the thing about the comics. The comics came out before Left Behind. So in the comics are where the character Riley was created, and we started talking to Neil Druckmann, who was the writer, co-wrote the comics and wrote the game, and what he said, like, I was so excited and then briefly convinced that it was the meanest practical joke ever, because I'd never heard a licensor say this, was, we want to do this, we know this is a game that has, middle-aged male protagonist. We'd like to make the comic the kind of book that fans of the game wouldn't necessarily pick up if it weren't attached to the game. We'd like to use the fact that it's attached to the game to tell people a sort of story that they wouldn't necessarily find otherwise. And that's why the Last of Us comic is a coming-of-age, like, intense teen girl friendship story, which ended up then really influencing and feeding into the DLC for the game, which are we still in, like, does it still count as a spoiler? It's been out since February. Does anyone object to me telling you what happens in it?
I'm covering my ears.
Okay, so in the Last of Us DLC is about Ellie and Riley, who are two teenage girls, and it's
What?
right. I know. Well, it's DLC for a AAA game.
Yep.
Game of the Year on everything and everywhere, about a queer interracial romance between two teenage girls.
Yep.
And that is a really big deal. And it's a big deal because there are a lot of people who found out about that who wouldn't have played the game who did because of it. But I think it's also a really big deal because there are a lot of people who played the game because it's The Last of Us and it's a AAA title with the generically scruffy, angry-looking man in a brown jacket who got a story and got an approach to storytelling and got the chance to care about something that they might not have found otherwise. When it sucks to not be represented, but I think that you also lose a lot when you see nothing but yourself.
Yep.
And I think The Last of Us is a great example of something that was just terrifically successful in the comics. This comic sold amazingly well. The DLC sold super well. There were a handful of complaints, but awash in a sea of positive feedback. That and I think it's a really fantastic proof of concept that you can take something that is built in a fairly traditional mold and use the fact that it's traditional to then really subvert that mold in licensed work and in spin-offs and in DLC and in sequels. And yeah, I want to see more of that.
One thing I'd like to go back real quickly is kids comics.
Yeah.
Yes.
The importance of kids comics in building a wider comics audience. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that.
It's tough. I worked as an editor on a kid's book that was not grounded in some other kind of licensing, Super Dinosaur, and it was such a sweet, special book, but it was hard to push because then there's that, like, it's the Pixar book, so please adults buy it and keep it alive, and then it was tough, but it was cool because you had to force people to read it, and you had to come up with new ways to find those readers. And that's why Free Comic Book Day is awesome.
Yay!
And that is why our libraries are awesome. I did not know how much power they had in convincing people to do things. And it's funny, so are those book clubs. Remember when we were kids?
Scholastic is
Yeah.
huge.
But
Yeah.
and they're very hard to get into because it's
Very hard.
expensive. So you have to have a lot of money to do a kid's book. I'm learning, but yeah, they're an amazing tool, and we were I think how many of us were kids when we started reading comics, like ages like 5 to 10, right? Yeah. You know, Ninja Turtles. And I'm looking at you, Ninja Turtles, man.
The one person who didn't raise their hand.
Another really important tool is again the internet. Just My Little Pony, which I don't edit sadly, is a great example. I know.
telling you.
Of, just the reach on iBooks and Comixology is just amazing. I mean, it's great in stores too because it's ponies. Who doesn't want that? But I think that's really important. And I will say, lots of people say that they want all ages books. I make all ages books. Please buy them more,
Yeah.
because I don't want them to shrink and go away, because reaching kids is absolutely the most important thing to me and in the future of our industry, and I want it to be here forever. So
I totally agree. I mean, I get fuzzies, warm fuzzies at work, but the biggest source of my warm fuzzies when I'm manning the store on a Saturday is seeing the families come in and mom and dad go and grab Saga, and the kids are going and they're grabbing like Samurai Jack, and I'm just like, oh, it's the best thing ever. And I really love that they share that kind of thing. Like, I don't plan on having kids, but if I did, it would be really great to share that special thing that makes me happy.
yeah, please buy them for your kids. Give them away trick-or-treating. Give them away to
We did
everyone
that.
you know. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's really important, because the earlier you catch them, the more they get that visual language just as kind of a native experience. And then hopefully they'll turn into creators themselves, maybe.
And the earlier they look at comics and think these are for me, and then
Yeah.
challenge people who try to push them out.
Yep.
All right, we're done?
We're done. Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Please stick around for Looking Past the Target Audience. Looking Past the Target Audience, which is another.
Oh.
How are you doing? Nice to see you again.
I'm gonna